Hello and welcome to English for Philosophy students. Today we are in our study of Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life. We are in lesson number 2 of rule number 8. Overall, this is lesson number 71. So, yesterday we began the chapter with an anecdote from Jordan Peterson's life of a time when he was confronted with the choice of telling the truth and hurting someone's feelings, or telling a white lie and perhaps sparing their feelings. And he ended up telling the truth. And the person was hurt briefly for just a moment, and then it was okay. We're going to continue reading at that point. I had had a strange set of experiences a few years before embarking upon my clinical training. I found myself subject to some rather violent compulsions, none acted upon, and developed the conviction in consequence that I really knew rather little about who I was and what I was up to. So I began paying much closer attention to what I was doing and saying. The experience was disconcerting, to say the least. I soon divided myself into two parts. One moment, please. No, Teddy, no. No chewing shoes. No. No. I have a puppy, and he is very large, and he is chewing shoes under the table right here. No, Teddy, nope. I may have to go get him something to chew. Give me a second. I gave him a toy, a new toy. I don't know if he likes it. Okay, so continue. I'm going to start reading again. I had had a strange set of experiences a few years before embarking upon my clinical training. I found myself subject to some rather violent compulsions, none acted upon, and developed the conviction in consequence that I really knew rather little about who I was and what I was up to. So I began paying much closer attention to what I was doing and saying. The experience was disconcerting, to say the least. I soon divided myself into two parts, one that spoke and one more detached, that paid attention and judged. I soon came to realize that almost everything I said was untrue. I had motives for saying these things. I wanted to win arguments and gain status and impress people and get what I wanted. I was using language to bend and twist the world into delivering what I thought was necessary. But I was fake. Realizing this, I started to practice only saying things that the internal voice would not object to. I started to practice telling the truth, or at least not lying. I soon learned that such a skill came in very handy when I didn't know what to do. What should you do when you don't know what to do? Tell the truth. So that's what I did my first day at the Douglas Hospital. The dog is very noisy. I hope it doesn't bother the video. Okay, let's go back. I had. This is not a typo. It's a grammatical form. Again, I can't remember the name of the tense, but it's some sort of a past perfect, where as of the time that he was teaching in the Douglas Hospital, he had already had a strange set of experiences. So sometime in his youth, he had had a strange set of experiences. He found himself subject to some rather violent compulsions. So to find myself subject to compulsions means I cannot control my own behavior. A compulsion means you want to do something, you almost have to do it, and usually it's not a good thing. Even though the word compulsion could be for a good thing, he currently he has a compulsion to tell the truth, which is good. So the word itself is neutral, but usually we use it for something negative, like I have a compulsion to steal, or to lie, or to watch pornography, or to go be immoral in some way. So he says he found himself subject to some rather violent compulsions. That could mean compulsion to do violence, like to go punch someone, or it could mean the strength of the compulsion was very great. A strong compulsion, a violent compulsion to go and eat ice cream. I can't believe this dog. He does say he didn't act upon the compulsions, so that's good news. Violent compulsions makes you think he wanted to go murder someone. So he says, I didn't do it. And he developed the conviction in consequence. So that means in consequence of these compulsions and these strange experiences, the result was that he developed a conviction. That means he began to believe something. A conviction is a belief. So he developed a belief, an idea, that I really knew rather little about who I was and what I was up to. So he had strange experiences. He found himself under compulsion to do some things that weren't good. And as a result, he discovered that he did not know himself. He did not know himself or what he was up to. Usually when we say, what are you up to? It means, what are you doing? What are you doing? So he discovered that he did not have self-knowledge. So, he says, I began paying much closer attention to what I was doing. So he began watching himself, watching his own actions, and what he was doing and what he was saying. He began to pay attention and watch himself. The experience was disconcerting, to say the least. To say the least is a phrase that amplifies what came before. So the experience was disconcerting. That must be amplified. So it means the experience was very disconcerting. That's the effect of to say the least. I think I'm going to have to put the dog outside. One moment. Come on, Teddy. Let's go. Come on. Be good, be quiet. You stay out. Sorry about that. He may still bark and howl. I put him outside and it is nice weather out there. He could have a nice time, but he will probably bark. We'll see. Okay, so Jordan says, so I began paying much closer attention to what I was doing and saying. The experience was disconcerting, to say the least. So it was very disconcerting. That is the effect of to say the least as a phrase. I soon divided myself into two parts, one that spoke and one, more detached, that paid attention and judged. I soon came to realize that almost everything I said was untrue. Wow. That would be disconcerting. If I discovered that almost everything I said was untrue, that would be very disconcerting. That would be something that would make me uncomfortable, make me nervous. It would make me want to reflect. This is what disconcerting means. He says, I had motives for saying these things. So what were his motives? He wanted to win arguments by saying things that are untrue and gain status and impress people and get what I wanted. None of these are good reasons for telling lies, in my opinion. Yes, last time we spoke about white lies, which are motivated by the desire not to hurt someone. That seems like a better reason to tell a lie than wanting to win arguments, gain status, impress people, and get what you want. I was using language to bend and twist the world into delivering what I thought was necessary. The word we usually use for this is manipulation. He was a verbal manipulator. I hate to deal with people like that. And I bet he was very good at it because he's really good with language. But I was a fake, so he was false. Realizing this, I started to practice only saying things that the internal voice would not object to. So I think the internal voice, when he divided himself into two, one that spoke and the other that judged, the one that judged is the internal voice. So he began to practice the discipline of saying only what his judge, the portion of himself that is impartially judging, would approve of. His voice of conscience. This sounds like an excellent thing to do. I started to practice telling the truth, or at least not lying. When my children were growing up, I would tell them, if there is a truth that you don't want to tell, hopefully for a good reason, then be silent, but don't tell a lie. It's morally acceptable to be silent, but not to tell a lie. So tell the truth, or at least don't lie. At least means as a minimum, basic standard, be silent and withhold information rather than telling a lie. I hope you can't hear the dog. He's scratching on the door and barking and trying to get in. And he's huge. He's 100 pounds. He's only 5 months old. He's a St. Bernard. And he's going to be 200 pounds. Okay. I soon learned that such a skill came in very handy when I didn't know what to do. So such a skill, you have to identify what is he referring to. That is the practice of telling the truth. The ability to tell the truth is a skill that comes in handy. Handy means you need it when I didn't know what to do. What should you do when you don't know what to do? Tell the truth. So that's what I did my first day at the Douglas Hospital. So at the Douglas Hospital, he was confronted by a social situation that he didn't know what to do with. There was a patient who was asking for friendship, and he didn't know how to respond because he was a clinician and she was a patient. So he told the truth. He said, I'm a clinician, you are a patient, so we cannot. And this worked out pretty well. When you don't know what to do, tell the truth. Later, I had a client who was paranoid and dangerous. I think I'll change colors. Well, maybe not. Paranoid and dangerous. Working with paranoid people is very challenging. They believe they have been targeted by mysterious conspiratorial forces working malevolently behind the scenes. Paranoid people are hyper alert and hyper focused. They are attending to nonverbal cues with an intentness never manifest during ordinary human interactions. They make mistakes in interpretation, that's the paranoia, but they are still almost uncanny in their ability to detect mixed motives, judgment, and falsehood. You have to listen very carefully and tell the truth if you are going to get a paranoid person to open up to you. Okay, so later means at some point in time after the interaction with the client, the crazy person at the Douglas Hospital. So sometime after that, Jordan had a client who was paranoid and dangerous. So now Jordan is a psychologist in practice, and people come to him for counseling. And one of his clients, one of his patients, was paranoid and dangerous. Paranoid means you believe people are out to get you. And of course, dangerous means they could become violent. Working with paranoid people is challenging. That means it is difficult. They believe they have been targeted by mysterious conspiratorial forces. So they believe there are people, invisible, out there who are trying to hurt them. Multiple people who have agreed together, conspired together to hurt the paranoid person. Paranoid people are hyper alert and hyper focused. Hyper means intensively. So they are alert and focused. They won't miss anything. They won't overlook some cue. They are watching you as you speak. They want to know if you are part of the evil people who are conspiring to hurt them. So they are hyper alert, hyper focused. They are attending to nonverbal cues. So attending, they are paying attention. They're paying attention to nonverbal cues. So for example, if I go like this, that means I want to get away. I'm bored. I don't want to talk to you anymore. I could be saying, oh no, speak, talk as much as you like. But if I do this, I'm telling you, I want to get away. That's nonverbal, a nonverbal cue. And the paranoid people pay attention to that kind of thing. So they are attending to nonverbal cues with an intentness never manifests during ordinary human interactions. So they are watching you more carefully than any normal person would watch you in a normal conversation. They're watching for lies. They make mistakes in interpretation. That's the paranoia. But they are still almost uncanny in their ability to detect mixed motives, judgment, and falsehood. So, they make mistakes in interpretation. I am tired of that dog. He's making a lot of noise here. They make mistakes in interpretation. That's the paranoia. So maybe if I were doing this, they may interpret it as, I am going to meet the other evil conspirators. I am the enemy. That would be paranoia. But they are still, in spite of mistakes and paranoia, that's what the still means. In spite of that, they are still almost uncanny. That means almost unbelievably good at detecting mixed motives. So a mixed motive may be partially wanting to be kind, but also wanting to get away. So that's a mixed motive. Judgment and falsehood. So they can detect, that means they know if you are judging them or if you are lying to them. You have to listen very carefully and tell the truth. If you are going to get a paranoid person to open up to you. Open up means tell you intimate truths. Open his heart and tell you significant truth about himself. I listened carefully, next paragraph. I listened carefully and spoke truthfully to my client. Now and then, he would describe blood-curdling fantasies of flaying people for revenge. I would watch how I was reacting. I paid attention to what thoughts and images emerged in the theater of my imagination while he spoke, and I told him what I observed. Hold on. I was not trying to control or direct his thoughts or actions or mine. I was only trying to let him know, as transparently as I could, how what he was doing was directly affecting at least one person, me. My careful attention and frank responses did not mean at all that I remained unperturbed, let alone approved. I told him when he scared me, often, that his words and behaviors were misguided, and that he was going to get into serious trouble. So let's go back. I listened carefully and spoke truthfully to my client. Now and then, meaning occasionally, sometimes, he would describe blood-curdling fantasies. Blood-curdling. We use that to describe horrific, over-the-top, dramatic, blood and guts, horrible. Blood-curdling means very frightening. Fantasies, that means these were ideas, fantasies, dreams that the client had. Fantasies of flaying people for revenge. So he would have thoughts of flaying people. That means cutting off your skin, maybe whipping you until your skin is destroyed. Flaying people for revenge. So this client was very violent in his imaginations. I would watch, by the way, the word would here a couple times, it indicates habit. I did this all the time. This was my habit. So my habit was I would watch how I was reacting. So Jordan was watching his own reactions carefully when he listened to this client. I would watch how I was reacting. I paid attention to what thoughts and images emerged in the theater of my imagination. So he paid attention to what his own thoughts were while the man spoke. And I told him what I observed. So maybe Jordan is saying that he paid attention to what thoughts occurred to Jordan and shared them with the guy. I think maybe that's what he means. I was not trying to control or direct his thoughts, the client's thoughts, or his actions, or mine. So Jordan was not trying to control the interaction, either the guy or Jordan's own reactions. I was only, so not trying to control, but rather Jordan was trying to let him know as transparently as I could. Transparently means without any deception, without any hiding, openly. I was only trying to let him know as transparently as I could how what he was doing was directly affecting at least one person, me. So Jordan was being a mirror for this guy. He was showing the guy the effect that the guy's actions were having on others, at least one person, Jordan. He was showing the guy the effect that speaking such horrible things has on other human beings. My careful attention and frank responses, frank means honest and transparent. My careful attention and frank responses did not mean at all, not even a little bit, at all. That's what it all means. Did not mean that I remained unperturbed. Okay? So, my careful attention and frank responses might give you the idea that I was calm. No, I was upset. I was perturbed. I was not unperturbed. Okay? Let alone approved. So, Jordan's careful attention and frank responses did not signal approval. They didn't even signal a neutral, I don't care. He was upset about it, and he did not approve. I told him when he scared me, which was often, that his words and behavior were misguided. So Jordan told him that he was on the wrong track, doing unwise things. His words were unwise and misguided. And that he was going to get into serious trouble. So Jordan was a faithful mirror for this guy. A mirror is a glass we look into to see ourselves. Jordan honestly gave feedback to the guy, showing the guy how the guy's words affected other people, i.e., affected Jordan. Moving on. He talked to me, nonetheless, because I listened and responded honestly, even though I was not encouraging in my responses. He trusted me, despite, or more accurately, because of my objections. He was paranoid, but not stupid. He knew his behavior was socially unacceptable. He knew that any decent person was likely to react with horror to his insane fantasies. He trusted me and would talk to me because that's how I reacted. There was no chance of understanding him without that trust. Back to the top. So, in the previous paragraph, Jordan ended with the phrase, "My manner did not signal approval, very much the reverse. I showed him how upset and I told him how wrong he was. Nonetheless, the guy kept talking to me." So, in spite of Jordan's negativity, the guy kept talking to him. He talked to me because I listened and responded honestly, even though I was not encouraging in my responses. He trusted me, despite, or more accurately, because of my objections. So at first he says, he trusted me despite my objections. That's like this nonetheless. You would expect that the guy would not trust me because I am condemning him and telling him he is wrong. But he did. So that would be he trusted me despite my manner. But then he says more accurately, because of my manner. He trusted me because I was honest. He knew his behavior was socially unacceptable, and any decent person was likely to react with horror to his insane fantasies. So he knew that. So if I tried to hide my horror and lied to him and said, "Oh, yes, you're legitimate with this," he would not have trusted me because he would know I was lying. He knew that any person would be horrified. So when I was honest in my horror, that made him trust me. He trusted me and would talk to me because that's how I reacted, with horror. There was no chance of understanding him without that trust. Probably the guy wouldn't have talked to him without the trust. Trouble for him generally started in bureaucracy, such as a bank. He would enter an institution and attempt some simple task. He was looking to open an account or pay a bill or fix some mistake. Now and then he encountered the kind of non-helpful person that everyone encounters now and then in such a place. That person would reject the ID he offered or require some information that was unnecessary and difficult to obtain. Sometimes, I suppose, the bureaucratic runaround was unavoidable, but sometimes it was unnecessarily complicated by petty misuses of bureaucratic power. My client was very attuned to such things. He was obsessed with honor. It was more important to him than safety, freedom, or belonging. Following that logic, because paranoid people are impeccably logical, he could never allow himself to be demeaned, insulted, or put down, even a little bit, by anyone. Water did not roll off his back. Because of his rigid and inflexible attitude, my client's actions had already been subjected to several restraining orders. Restraining orders work best, however, with the sort of person who would never require a restraining order. Let's move back. So, Jordan is telling us more about this guy. And this guy tended to have problems when he went into a place like a bank that had a bureaucracy. Bureaucracy, some kind of rule of many people who are not very efficient. Government. He would, and again, here we have the habit. This happened over and over again. It was his general habit to enter an institution and attempt some simple task. He was looking to open an account or pay a bill or fix some mistake. Now and then, occasionally, he encountered the kind of non-helpful person that everyone encounters now and then in such a place. Places like that often hire human beings with small minds who are very rule-oriented and love power. You run into these kinds of people. Every now and again, the client would run into someone like that. That person would, maybe, these are examples of possibilities, for example, might reject the ID he offered or require some information that was unnecessary and difficult to obtain. So they were just being difficult, making life hard for him. Sometimes, I suppose, the bureaucratic runaround was unavoidable. Bureaucratic runaround means they're just making you do things for no reason. Sometimes maybe it was unavoidable. They really did need a different ID. But sometimes it was unnecessarily complicated by petty misuses of bureaucratic power. The word petty means small-minded and mean. And so sometimes the interaction was complicated by the person employed by the bank or the institution being a petty dictator. My client was very attuned to such things. So remember, paranoid people are hyper-focused on this sort of thing. Hyper-attentive to nonverbal cues. And these type of petty bureaucratic tyrants, they want to put you down and raise up their own authority and dignity at your expense. So they often insult you and treat you with disrespect. This is the kind of thing that this client was very attuned to. He was obsessed with honor. So that means his own dignity. You can't insult him. It was his honor. It is his honor. His honor was more important to him than safety, freedom, or belonging. So safety. So it's more important to him than getting kicked out of the bank by an officer with a gun. Freedom. His honor was more important to him than the possibility of being arrested and put in jail. Belonging. His dignity was more important to him than the feeling of social acceptance that you get when you get along with people. Following that logic, because paranoid people are impeccably logical, they're very logical, perfectly logical, he could never allow himself to be demeaned, insulted, or put down, even a little bit, by anyone. All of those words mean something very similar. Demeaned, insulted, put down. They're synonyms. He couldn't allow himself to be disrespected even a little bit by anyone. But this type of petty bureaucrat thrives on putting people down. It's not personal. They're not against you. They just want to feel important by making you feel small. Water did not roll off his back. In the United States, we have a phrase that when people are getting upset about something that's small, we say, let it roll off your back like water off a duck. Ducks are birds that live on the water, and they have oil on their feathers, and water doesn't soak them. It rolls right off. And so we say, let it roll off your back like water off a duck. Water did not roll off this guy's back. He couldn't let it go. Because of his rigid and inflexible attitude, my client's actions had already been subjected to several restraining orders. So people had called the police, had him arrested, and the judge had given him restraining orders saying, you cannot go to this bank. You cannot go to this person. Restraining orders work best, however, with the sort of person who would never need a restraining order. So a restraining order is very weak. It says, don't go near that place. But a person who is violent and dangerous is going to ignore a restraining order and go to that place anyway. Quote, I will be your worst nightmare, was his phrase of choice in such situations. His phrase of choice. That is the phrase he liked to say to people when he was in a situation like this. I will be your worst nightmare. It's a threat. I have wished intensely that I could say something like that after encountering unnecessary bureaucratic obstacles, but it's generally best to let such things go. Let it go. This guy cannot let things go. He is going to fight to get his dignity. My client meant what he said, meaning he was going to be their worst nightmare. He meant what he said, however, and sometimes he really did become someone's nightmare. He was the bad guy in No Country for Old Men. He was the person you meet in the wrong place at the wrong time. If you messed with him, even accidentally, he was going to stalk you and remind you what you had done and scare the living daylights out of you. He was no one to lie to. I told him the truth, and that cooled him off. So, all of this is rather dramatically saying this guy was dangerous. He will follow a person and get in their face and threaten them and try to hurt them if they insult him. And Jordan didn't want to lie to him because then the guy would do it to Jordan. But Jordan told the guy the truth, and that cooled him off. That means that pacified him and made him less angry. It's a little bit surprising because you would think that if ever there was time for a white lie, it would be with this guy. But no, this guy, paranoid people are attuned. They're watching for lies. So it's safer to tell the truth in this case. Okay, next time we'll have another anecdote about Jordan's landlord. See you later.